Riding his bicycle through a secluded forest, an elderly man arrives at a house deep in the woods. When he knocks on the door, no one answers. Inside, the owner, a woman, is seen doing laundry in a neglected setting. Hearing strange sounds from the cellar, the man opens the door and ventures down, hoping to help whoever is there. As he considers leaving to get help, he is suddenly pulled inside. The story then jumps 30 years into the future. A group of students is participating in a camp program where all communication devices are prohibited. During the preparatory ceremony, each student draws a random number to determine their hiking team. That evening, they gather around a campfire. 3 of them, Julik, Tech, and Daniel, engage in casual conversation. Soon, a confident young woman named Anela joins them, while a more reserved girl, Zosa, sits alone, quietly holding a necklace. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to an older woman opening the same cellar door. She drags a wild boar down the steps, presumably to feed something below. However, she slips and falls. Suddenly, a human-like hand covered in strange growths appears, and the boar is taken. The older woman meets her end in that cellar. Morning arrives, and the students prepare to begin their hike. A priest blesses their journey before their guide, Isa, leads 5 of them into the forest. They walk for hours through the rugged terrain. Daniel, distracted by Anela, follows behind her, while Tech, behind him, teases him. This causes Daniel to react emotionally, pushing Tech, who falls and injures his leg. The group stops to help, and Isa realizes she needs scissors to clean the wound. Unexpectedly, Zosa, visibly emotional, offers a knife, surprising Isa, who wonders why a student would carry such an item. After tending to Tech's wound, they continue. Daniel apologizes for his outburst. Meanwhile, Julik steps aside for personal reasons and notices a foul smell. He discovers a deer's mutilated and decaying body. The group questions what could have caused this, but Zosa quietly spots a human-like hand behind a tree. She says nothing. Eventually, they reach their first campsite. Everyone rushes to set up their tents. Anela, struggling with hers, asks Daniel for help before heading to a nearby stream to bathe. Night falls, and they gather again around the campfire. Suddenly, they hear rustling in the bushes. Startled, Isa investigates and finds a small fox hiding there. Relieved, they settle in for the night. Unable to sleep, Daniel walks back to the stream, where Anela soon joins him. They share an intimate moment before she returns to her tent. Left alone, Daniel secretly turns on a hidden phone. At that moment, a strange figure silently appears behind him and drags him away. Daniel's life ends in that dark forest. The next morning, everyone wakes up puzzled by Daniel's absence. Isa questions the group. Anela admits she last saw him at the stream. Checking the area, Isa finds a discarded personal safety item and a cigarette. Meanwhile, Zosa notices a bloodstain on a tree. Isa instructs Tech and Anela to stay at the campsite while she, Zosa, and Julik search for Daniel. Julik, clearly nervous, slows them down, but they press on. After some time, they discover an old, run-down house in the forest. Inside, they find aged photographs, including one of twin boys. Strange noises come from the cellar, and they locate the entrance to the same underground room from the film's beginning. Isa and Zosa descend, leaving Julik upstairs. In the cellar, they find multiple bodies, including Daniel's. Upstairs, Julik panics as the strange figure enters the house. It makes its way down to the cellar. Isa finds an exit and urges the students to escape first. She could have followed them to safety, but she gets distracted by Daniel's ringing phone. As she tries to retrieve it to call for help, the grotesque figure with noticeable growths and unkempt hair confronts her. Isa's life ends there, and the creature tosses her remains outward, shocking Zosa and Julik. The 2 students flee in terror. Back at the camp, Anela and Tech are talking when another figure, this one hairless, suddenly approaches Anela from behind. She is critically wounded, her life ends, and her body is discarded. Realizing the danger, Tech escapes into the woods. Zosa and Julik run for their lives, but Julik, overwhelmed with fear, slows them down. Eventually, they find a house occupied by an older man who lets them inside. They frantically explain what happened, including the fate of their guide. Elsewhere, Tech stumbles upon a hidden chapel in the forest, where he encounters the priest who had blessed them before. Desperate, he explains everything he witnessed. The priest has a phone but claims the signal is too weak. He tries a landline, insisting it also fails due to poor reception. Tech starts to sense something is off. Suddenly, a strange sound comes from the device. Before he can fully process it, the priest unexpectedly strikes him, knocking him unconscious. When Tech regains awareness, he finds himself tied to a chair. The priest speaks in a disturbingly calm manner. Suddenly, noises outside draw the priest's attention. He steps out to check, only to be confronted by the hairless creature. The being uses immense force against him, pushing him toward a wood-chipping machine. The priest does not survive. Inside, Tech manages to free himself. Peering outside, he spots the figure and quickly hides in a cupboard. As the creature opens it, a tense moment unfolds. Meanwhile, Zosa and Julik remain at the old man's house. He shares a chilling story from the past. Long ago, a mother lived in the area with her twin sons. One night, a meteorite fell in the forest, and the curious boys brought it home. But by morning, they had changed in horrifying ways. Their terrified mother locked them in the cellar, feeding them in secret for decades. Over time, she lost her sanity. The old man, who once confronted the twins and lost part of his leg, now warns Zosa and Julik that they should stay with him to remain safe. Zosa, however, is determined. She and Julik decide to retrieve Daniel's phone from the cellar and call for help. They have a plan. Julik will distract the figure upstairs while Zosa slips into the cellar to find the phone. Meanwhile, one of the creatures lingers in the cellar, among the remains of its victims. It's clear that many have already fallen. Julik approaches the upper part of the house, knocking on the door to draw attention. As intended, the figure moves upward, giving Zosa a chance to enter the lower area. She quickly grabs Daniel's phone, but at that moment, the figure returns. Zosa is captured, and Julik rushes down to help, using a knife. Unfortunately, the weapon has no effect, and Julik is overpowered. The figure momentarily interacts with him in a disturbingly unsettling way. When Zosa awakens, she finds herself bound, while Julik is gravely wounded. She tries to use Daniel's phone, but finds it locked. Desperate, she retrieves Daniel's severed hand and uses it to unlock the device, only to realize the battery is dead. Julik, in excruciating pain, pleads with Zosa to end his suffering. Initially hesitant, she ultimately complies to relieve his distress. Meanwhile, both creatures gather. The one with hair applies a strange substance to a wound, while the hairless one carries items stolen from their victims. The hairless figure then returns to the cellar. Summoning the last of her strength, Zosa works carefully on her restraints with a knife and frees herself. Instead of fleeing, she chooses to fight. Grabbing a large blade, she ascends the stairs and finds one of the creatures sleeping. Without hesitation, she strikes repeatedly until she's certain it's no longer a threat. Zosa then sprints into the forest. At the old man's house, a noise startles him. Fearing one of the creatures has arrived, he fires his weapon as the door opens, only to realize too late that it was Tech. The accidental shot takes his life. Meanwhile, as Zosa runs through the woods, she spots a police car. She waves it down, and the officer quickly stops. While driving away, the car suddenly strikes something. When the officer checks, he discovers it's the other creature. Zosa warns him to be careful, but before he fully understands, the figure recovers and attacks. The officer doesn't survive. Terrified, Zosa breaks a patrol car window, climbs inside, and struggles to start it. At first, the engine won't turn over, but after a tense moment, it finally roars to life. The creature jumps onto the roof, but as the car speeds up, it loses its grip and falls. Instead of escaping, Zosa puts the car in reverse and ensures the creature is completely neutralized before driving away. But the story doesn't end there. Later that night, two intoxicated individuals pass by the same location. They notice the fallen creature, only to realize that somehow it's still alive. Meanwhile, law enforcement swarms the house where Zosa fought the other creature as the film comes to a chilling conclusion. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.